Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
No, the problem is I know more than everybody else about this. There's nobody I can turn to when things are not working for me. I can't tell you how frustrating this is. There's not, I mean, you ought to see it when I describe a problem and people propose the solutions. You know, it's like taking me back to the first grade. No, been there, done that. It's not that. And I give up even explaining the problem to them because I know they're going to be useless. No, I'm talking about battery life on my iPhones all of a sudden. And I'm not going to bore you with it. I know the stick to the issues crowd gets nuts, but it's actually kind of, there has to be an explanation for it. And because it's odd, it's extremely weird. And maybe if I have time today, I will get into it. Anyway, greetings, folks. Great to have you here. Man, are we loaded today? I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to take all 3 hours and then some. I'm going to try to get it all in here in 3 hours. Much of today is going to build on points that I have been making the past 2 days. Evolving, growing, adding evidence to it, all rooted around the question, who is and what is the conservative movement, and why is it apparently behaving so oddly? I think I can explain this and much else to all of you as the program unfolds today before your very eyes and ears. It will explain the massive support for Donald Trump that people can't figure out. It will explain why there's abject hatred and panic over Trump in the Washington Republican and even conservative media establishment. Trump picking Sarah Palin or Palin deciding to endorse Trump just exacerbates it. And by the way, Sarah Palin is going to help me make my points today because I read the transcript for her speech that she made, and it's actually the speech that Palin made yesterday for Trump. I saw people panic. She looked like she lost her place. She was reading cue cards. She didn't seem to be all there. I didn't see it, but I read the transcript of her speech, and I'm telling you, it is. Well, I don't want to overdo it, but brilliant. But man, I'll tell you, she's got substantive, logical reasons for doing what she's doing, and she explained it yesterday for anybody who really wanted to pay attention to listen to it. So I'm going to explain that. But I also have to tell you that Trump accepting an endorsement somewhat puzzled me. I just have to be honest. I look at Trump as a genuine outsider, as somebody who doesn't do anything by the book in politics. And yesterday he did two things by the book that frankly surprised me. One is accepting an endorsement. I did not see Sarah's speech, But I saw sound bites of it, and I saw Trump standing aside while she was at the podium, and he's not the kind of guy that stands aside. He just isn't. He's that dominant. He is that huge to give up the podium even to somebody endorsing him, sponsoring him. I'm not criticizing it. Don't anybody misunderstand. I'm just telling you what I think here. Do with it what you want. The second thing that happened yesterday that really, really surprised me, again, given Trump is rewriting the manual on how to be an outsider and how to avoid all of the traps that you get into if you're going to play the game of politics the way the insiders play it, I was shocked to see him go all in on the ethanol subsidy. I mean, that reeks of political insiderism. On the other hand, I understand it's the Hawkeye. It's the first in this whole series of caucuses and primaries, and he's nip and tuck there with Cruz and wants to win it. And this is what you have to do. But see, that's the point. This is how insiders look at it. This is what you have to go buy votes. And that's what supporting King Corn in Iowa is all about. Cruz, for his part, got into a little bit of trouble because they misreported that he also was on board. But he said, no. I want to phase it out in 5 years. I want to get rid of it. We can't get rid of it overnight, but I want to get rid of it. So both candidates are on board for the ethanol subsidy. Cruz, for his part, supports publicly letting it fade away in 5 years. So, but these are just thoughts that I had that I'm sharing with you. Don't attach any more to it. I want to warn you, this may not be good for me to say, and I'm going to try to make it so it isn't necessary, but you may need a lot of nuance listening to me. In other words, avoid knee jerks today if you can, and hang in as I go through some of this stuff, because it's not complicated, but it is detailed. And of course, I, ladies and gentlemen, excel at making the complex understanding. This actually isn't that complex. It's just so strange. And I'm not trying to be cryptic. I'll tell you the last couple of days. Remember the piece from David French, National Review, where he speculated that one of the problems going on with the Republican Party is they don't even know who their base is, that they have overestimated who their conservative base is. They do not understand it and have overestimated. In other words, the conservative base is not nearly as conservative as they think it is, nor is it conservative as they define it. That's key. The way the Republican establishment defines conservatism is not what it is. To them, it's hayseed hicks, pro-lifers running around in pickup trucks with shotguns in the back, bitter clingers. You know, Obama's not just speaking for himself on that. There are a lot of people in Washington, both parties, who have that opinion of conservatives, and the Republicans might even look at their own base in that regard. But the truth is that they've overestimated the conservative base, and furthermore, they are clueless in understanding what it is that motivates their own base, and as such, they're incapable of understanding why Trump has any support. Now, I'm going to explain all that to you today, and more, because I have been researching it, delving deeply into it. My own instincts in this from a year ago are being confirmed on a couple of things. Snerdley tells me I haven't seen this, but why would I doubt Snerdley? I mean, why would I think Snerdley would be wrong? But why would I think Snerdley would come to me with something he's doing? He's telling me that George Will is in a column today. Well, you read it today. I don't know when it was published, but apparently George Will is advocating that if Trump wins, he's advocating third party, that he will go third party. Oh, it was an interview. It's not a column. All right. Oh, if it's in your stack, I'll find it. I've been swamped in here. I haven't had a chance to go through everything. So anyway, George Will talking third party. I can explain why that's happening too, folks. I'm looking forward to all of this. But I'm not going to rush into it. I'm doing my best to keep a cap, if you will, on my energy level, because it's important. And it'll start making sense when I start sharing with you explicit content from Sarah Palin's speech that she gave for Trump. But I'll tell you, in addition to what's happening on the Republican side, there's all kinds of stuff happening on the Democrat side. And let me just give you a little sample. A .50 caliber rifle found at El Chapo's hideout in Mexico came from Obama's Fast and Furious program. A .50 caliber rifle found at El Chapo's hideout in Mexico was funneled through the gun smuggling investigation known as Fast and Furious, sources confirmed yesterday to Fox News. Former Attorney General Eric Holder was held in contempt after he refused to divulge documents for a congressional investigation into the matter. If you recall, a .50 caliber rifle is massive. It can stop a car. It can take down a helicopter. And El Chapo was found to have one in his possession. And it was part of Obama's Fast and Furious operation. Now, for those of you new to the program, or people with short memories, let me give you the Cliff Notes version of Fast and Furious. It is something that Obama and Eric Holder initiated in their first term. Eric Holder, the Attorney General. They desperately, like all liberals, wanted massive new gun control legislation or executive orders. They wanted to get guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, because by definition, that's the only people you can take them away from. By definition, you're not going to get guns out of the hands of criminals, because by definition, criminals are breaking the law, and they'll do whatever it takes to get a gun. The only guns you can go get are held by the law-abiding. But it's a rite of passage, an article of faith in liberalism that guns are bad in the hands of people. The Second Amendment, stupid and folly, shouldn't be there, and we got to go get people's guns. So they hatched a program which was actually something that got started during the Bush administration but was abandoned. And what Obama and Holder did was build on the Bush program. The Bush program was nothing at all like Fast and Furious ended up to be. It just provided the foundation. And it was very simple. The Obama administration allowed guns like this, assault rifles, 50 caliber rifles, massively huge, powerful weapons, to be sold in gun stores in the Southwest, Phoenix, for example. And they were then allowed to be taken across the border into Mexico. The plan was, it really was, that these guns purchased legally in American gun stores would then be used in horrible crimes south of the border. When these horrible crimes took place, featuring much murder and mayhem, the news media was supposed to react with outrage, report the details, and focus on the fact that this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for gun laws in America, which makes the sale of these weapons perfectly legal. So mayhem was supposed to ensue after the regime allowed these guns to cross the border after having been sold. And what the desired result was that the American people would be so mad and express such outrage that they would stand up in unison and demand that the government do something about all these guns. That didn't happen. Fast and Furious was an absolute failure because the regime continually, then as now, misunderstands the American people and the relationship they have with the Second Amendment, the role of guns legally in people's lives. So it didn't happen, and the program was then, after all this, it was discovered, and it had a name, Fast and Furious. And the short version is that when it was discovered for what it was, people started describing it, such as me here on this program and many others. The regime started to deny it. No, it didn't happen. It's crazy. Made it sound like there was nothing to it. I think a border agent ended up dead as a result of Fast and Furious. There was one American death, and it was a Border Patrol agent. I think same issue. So anyway, it was a total bomb from the regime standpoint. The guns are still in the hands, as the evidence in this story. A 50 caliber rifle purchased in an American gun store ends up in the arsenal of El Chapo, who happens to be the drug kingpin of Mexico. Did you see that they discovered some people digging another tunnel at his prison the other day? Just right out in the middle of the day, they found some people digging another tunnel to get the guy out of there. They weren't even waiting to do it under cover of darkness. And then there's a companion story from the Politico. An Obama-appointed federal judge has rejected Obama's executive privilege claim over Fast and Furious records. The Justice Department's own public disclosures undercut the president's privilege claim, says the judge, Amy Berman Jackson. She rejected Obama's assertion of executive privilege to deny Congress access to records pertaining to the operation, which is essentially, it was a gun-running operation run by the United States government to get guns into the hands of criminals in Mexico so they could raise hell, mayhem, cause outrage in the American media that was supposed to bleed over to the American public, where the public would demand something get done. Now people want to see the records of the program. Obama says, no, you guys in Congress don't have the right. It's executive privilege. The judges told him to go pound sand. One of the judges he appointed. By the way, Fast and Furious involved thousands of weapons. Not just a handful of guns, not just a few 50 caliber rifles, but thousands of guns were allowed to cross the border. There's nothing alleged about Fast and Furious. It did allow thousands of weapons to be sold to drug dealers in Mexico. The only question is whether this was the sole purpose of the program. A lot of experts think that Obama wanted the drug cartels to commit such heinous crimes with these U.S. weapons. The public would demand more gun control laws. That's count me in that camp. And that's what people are trying to get to the bottom of. In addition to this, Bernie Sanders he leads Hillary Clinton 60 to 33% in New Hampshire in a WMUR poll. And the New York Times has a story on how a bunch of young feminists, exactly what we predicted on this program, are beginning to abandon Hillary as they learn about the bimbo eruptions and all of that. The New York Times has the story. And the picture is with Lena Dunham. You know, supposedly the icon of modern era feminism. Another reason, folks, I'm glad I am older and am the age I am. If that's the icon. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition, and by the way, I just found it's a Breitbart story. George Will hints at going third party if it's Trump versus Hillary. And predictably, one of the comparatives he makes is, of course, Trump equals Goldwater. Conservative nominee equals... Oh, wait! Trump and conservatism, this is where everybody's going wrong. That's the tease. Trying to figure out Trump and why conservatives like Trump, why they're abandoning other conservatives like Cruz, who is the Trump coalition. That's really the key to understanding this. But all that aside, the Republican establishment does, when they think of conservatism, and particularly in the form of a presidential nominee, it means it's going to be Goldwater landslide defeat. They never, I don't know why, well, at least I do, they never think of a conservative nominee as equaling Ronaldus Magnus and winning 2 landslides. Nope, for some reason, no matter who, if the nominee is coming from the conservative wing of the party, then the establishment Republicans fear a Goldwater-style landslide defeat. Goldwater was never going to win that election. LBJ had that election if he didn't even campaign, coming on the heels of the assassination of JFK. Anyway, we are going to lift, for one instance, my ban on audio sound bites from MSNBC. Something occurred there that dovetails nicely with the theme of the program today. And so I instructed Cookie to get me the bite. And she was just ecstatic. She loves it when I lift the ban on MSNBC. Sit tight, back. All right. Also on the Hillary Clinton side, in addition to the WMUR poll in New Hampshire, that's an important poll. This is not an outlier poll. It's a mainstream New Hampshire poll. Bernie Sanders has soared to a commanding lead over Hillary in New Hampshire 3 weeks before the primary. Sanders leads Clinton 60 to 33%. This is a WMUR CNN poll. He is viewed favorably by 91% of likely Democrat primary voters, unfavorably by 7%. And then There is news about the Hillary Clinton email server. It turns out, now we know why there are 150 FBI agents tracking her down. It turns out that she shared this email server that she had outside the office, the one she had at home in the basement of Chappaqua or whatever, that had all of the classified documents on. It turns out that server and its contents were shared with the Clinton Family Crime Foundation as well, meaning Bill Clinton had access to the emails, or could have had access to the emails on Hillary Clinton's server. Hillary shared an email network with the Clinton Foundation. According to records, shared an IP address with her husband's email server, PresidentClinton.com. Both servers were housed in New York, not in the basement of Clinton's Chappaqua home. Correct myself on that. Which means that whatever was on Hillary's server, Bill had access to, and they're out there jointly seeking hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in donations from agents, representatives, foreign governments all over the world. And it has now been speculated, because of the nature of the highly classified nature of the documents on her server, that they go beyond top secret. Dr. Krauthammer on Fox, for example, last night said this goes beyond what Snowden did. This is worse than Snowden. And by the way, people are now bringing Petraeus into this. Petraeus, they're thinking about stripping his rank from him. They're thinking about just totally ditching him. If that happens, he loses everything. He loses his pension. He loses every financial benefit that he accrued while in the military, not to mention his reputation as one of America's greatest generals. And Petraeus did the identical thing that Hillary did, and maybe even not as bad. He shared whatever secured information, classified data he had with the author that was doing the book on him. It turned out to be his mistress, Paula Broadwell. And how given how this regime, it's now up to the Secretary of Defense what happens to Petraeus. Now you stop and think of this. Here's Petraeus, author of The Surge in Iraq, saves the day. Obama hires him to run the Iraq or the Afghanistan portion, makes him CIA director, whatever. And now they're set to destroy him. There's no doubt some political component here, obviously, but they're set to destroy Petraeus. One of the most decorated, highly decorated, highest reputed military men of the last 2 centuries. And he's on the verge of being destroyed. Pensions, 401ks, everything that he's built up would be totally taken away because it's all with the government. This would be part of the punishment. So people start to say, well, wait, if you're going to do this, Petraeus, and Mrs. Clinton's done identical things, pretty close to identical, if not worse, then how can you let her slide? So, and there are other things involving the Hillary-Bernie Sanders campaign. As I mentioned, New York Times with a story on how millennial-aged feminists, led by that icon Lena Dunham, are now beginning to have doubts about Mrs. Clinton because they're not cool. They're not hip with all this bimbo eruption stuff. They really are just now learning about it. They're not cool with the fact that when these bimbos popped up, that it was Hillary's responsibility and she eagerly accepted it to destroy the women. When these women are out making up stories about having been raped on campus to make a point of how rotten men are, here's Hillary Clinton. They are discovering she took the women out to protect her husband, who was a predator. And this is in the New York Times, folks. And it's a pretty straight-up story. Now, let's get started with all of this that's happening in the Republican campaign. Trump, Cruz, the Palin endorsement, the exploration of so many questions that revolve around how can any of this be happening? How can conservatives abandon conservatism and go Trump? How can conservatives abandon the Republican Party and go for somebody who's obviously not a conservative or at least isn't campaigning as one? Why is Sarah Palin, who is, if she had a direct role in helping Cruz get elected in Texas, and she was a Tea Party darling and a Tea Party figure, what in the world is she doing endorsing Trump? People are scratching their heads, can't figure it out. And they're trying to, well, maybe this, what's in it for her personally? Maybe she just wants airtime. Maybe she's seeking renewed celebrity status or what have you. None of that is even close to what's going on. What's going on is all rooted in what I have been talking about the past 2 days, about the nature of conservatism, the so-called conservative movement. Who are they? Where are they in relationship to the Republican Party and the Democrat Party? And I want to start with this sound bite that I am lifting the ban on MSNBC for you to hear. It happened last night on a program called All In with Chris Hayes. I'm so tempted to describe the aesthetics of this show, but I'm going to avoid that. I'll just stick here with the substance. Also on this show, in this segment last night, was one of the PMS NBC correspondents, Joy Reid, and a Republican operative by the name of Rick Wilson. He's a Republican media consultant, and he would qualify as being part of the Republican establishment with the Republican consultants class. And he was on to explain what in the name of Sam Hill is going on with this endorsement of Trump. So we've divided this into two parts because the first part dovetails with a point that I want to make beyond the soundbite here, and the second part is Rick Wilson. So here is the first part of the segment. It's not in response to any question. They're simply talking about what they consider to be the breakup and the fracturing of the conservative alliance with the GOP. Now, I am mentioned here, but this is not why I'm playing the bite.
For decades, you've had Rush Limbaugh and this sort of conservative entertainment complex holding together these various wings of the party as if there was a core belief in a set of specific conservative values among the base. When it turns out what the base wants is a feeling that can be delivered by Rush, but some policies that are an apostasy to movement conservatives.
Okay, now, it's not just me who have seen a couple of things this week written by people talking about overestimating the conservative base. I mean, this is beginning to percolate in a lot of places. And what Joy Reid is saying is that for decades you've had Rush Limbaugh in this sort of conservative entertainment complex holding together the various wings of the Republican Party as if there was a core belief in a set of specific conservative values among the base. And she says it turns out that there isn't a set of values, conservative values, that are the glue that keep the conservative base together. She's saying Limbaugh has been the glue. Limbaugh has been what has kept everybody on board with the idea that the Republican Party is conservative or that there is a conservative movement, but that there really haven't been policies that have provided the glue. There haven't been conservative beliefs, particularly not found in the Republican Party. That's why so many conservatives are abandoning it and going to Trump. So her view is, and they would love to believe this, that there never has been any serious conservative movement. It's all been an illusion created by me, that I and the power of this program have kept the various, as she calls them, wings of the conservative base attached and together. But now all it's taken is somebody like Trump to come along. And what's happening is that a lot of people who were thought to be conservative really aren't, and they're still eagerly supporting Trump for a whole host of reasons, but in their view, this means there never was a real, solid, conservative movement. It's been an illusion. And furthermore, let me just give you one more little tip as we head into this. The belief now is, and I predict you're going to start seeing this in places, one of the theories is that the reason the conservative media and the Republican establishment media are so virulently anti-Trump is because what he's exposing. It's the theory that all these conservative think tanks and all these conservative policy institutions and all of these groups of people have been sitting around thinking and coming up with policy in Washington, D.C. are being exposed as irrelevant, unnecessary, and never accomplished anything in the first place. That's what the left is trying to use Trump's success to say. Because their theory is, how in the world, if there's a conservative movement, and if it really mattered, and if there was a conservative movement that was really centered on and based on substantive issues, then how in the hell can Donald Trump come along and do what he's doing anyway? If there's a solid set of conservative values, and if there's a huge conservative base, and if it is based on policy and substance, then why isn't it all aligned behind Ted Cruz? And it's the answer to that question that I find fascinating. Now, but that's not the reason I wanted to play the bite. Nope. You got to hear this Republican establishment guy. You got to hear this whole thing. You've got a Rick Wilson, Republican establishment consultant. So, Mike, I want you to play cut one again, and then don't stop. Go right into number two. Well, no, we can't do that because there's a question that's asked that's not us. Okay. Play number one again, and I just saw the clock. I'm sorry, folks. I have to take an obscene profit time. Otherwise, the segment after this is going to be 15 seconds, and you're going to get mad. This is no. Now, ladies and gentlemen, understand something. It's not that there is not a conservative movement. And I'm not trying to be tricky here. The theory is not that there's not a conservative movement. The theory is that it's not conservatism which unites the movement. There's a group of people out there that you would think, looking at them, listening to them, they're conservative, the way they vote, but it's not conservatism that is uniting them or motivating them. This is what everybody is missing in Washington. Remember, it goes back to the fact, in Washington, Republican establishment central, even after the two midterm elections, 2010, 2014, they still don't get that the primary motivating characteristic of Republican voters this time around is an absolute direct opposition to the left, to the Democrat Party, to Obama, and everything has been going on the last 7 years. They want it stopped and reversed. And they will go anywhere if they are convinced whoever's telling them they're going to stop it is telling them the truth. They don't have to be conservative. They don't even have to be Republican. As long as they're good populists and can espouse nationalism, it's not conservatism making them go there. This is what everybody's misunderstanding about whatever coalition Trump has put together. But anyway, back to the MSNB soundbite. Here's number one. Number two, here is the whole thing. They're discussing the meaning of the Palin endorsement, what it says about the Republican Party, conservatism, and so forth. Here are both bites. The whole thing is going to run here probably about 50 seconds. The first bite, and I'll have to come back after this and give you the question that sets up the second one.
For decades, you've had Rush Limbaugh and this sort of conservative entertainment complex holding together these various wings of the party as if there was a core belief in a set of specific conservative values among the base. When it turns out what the base wants is a feeling that can be delivered by Rush, but some policies that are an apostasy to movement conservatives.
So what she's saying is that there are a bunch of conservatives, supposed conservatives, that'll call themselves conservatives, but they will do things that the conservative movement doesn't understand while calling themselves conservative. The point is, it's a conservative movement, but it is not glued together. You're not unified by conservatism. Now, up next, the host of the show asked a question of this guy, Rick Wilson, Republican consultant. He said, There's this piece today in a magazine called The Week where he looked at this Samuel Francis, a white supremacist guy who started out mainstream conservative, was an advisor to Patrick Buchanan. He said that your best path, Republicans' best path, get rid of all the conservatism stuff, get rid of all the limited government deficits, get rid of capitalism, stop talking about that, and just go whole hog on nationalism. What do you think of that, Rick?
That's absurd. I think that there is definitely still a very significant portion of the party that is a limited government conservatism-based faction of the overall coalition. Now, the screamers and the crazy people on the alt-right, as they call it, who love Donald Trump, who have plenty of Hitler iconography in their Twitter icons. But the fact of the matter is most of them are childless single men who masturbate to anime. They're not real political players. These are not people who matter in the overall course of humanity.
There is a ranking member of the Republican establishment categorizing Trump supporters as the screamers and crazy people on the right with lots of Hitler iconography in their Twitter icons. But the fact of the matter is most of them are childless single men who masturbate to anime. What's that, a Japanese cartoon character? The style. And so there you have the Republican establishment view of the typical Trump supporter. They said the alt-right. Yeah, he said the crazy people on the alt-right, as they call it, who love Donald Trump, the screamers and all that. At any rate, that's why I lifted the ban. I wanted you to hear that. We will be back after this. Don't go away. Just getting warmed up here. Rush Limbaugh executing assigned host duties flawlessly, 0 mistakes. No, the GOP's not going to castigate Rick Wilson for any of that. Just hang in there and be tough, folks. I guarantee it's going to be worth your while. The views expressed by the host on this program, documented to be almost always right, 99.8% of the time. It's a real privilege, a thrill, and a delight to be with you. Great to have you here. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882, and email address lrushbo@eibnet.com. If you are on hold, I just looked at the roster of people on hold, and I really want to talk to all of you, so I hope you can be patient and hang on. I'm going to get to the phones as quickly as I can. I want to read something to you. I want you to really listen to this. This was written back in 1996. It was written by a man named Samuel Francis, who later in life suffered he acquired the reputation of being a white supremacist, undeservedly so, but there have been efforts undertaken to destroy his credibility and so forth. He was an advisor to Pat Buchanan. But don't let any of that cloud what I'm going to read to you yet. I want to read to you from an essay he wrote called From Household to Nation. It was published in Chronicles magazine back in, say, 1996. Sooner or later, as the globalist elites seek to drag the country into conflicts and global commitments, as they preside over the economic destruction of the U.S., as they manage the de-legitimization of our own culture and the dispossession of our own people, and as the global elites disregard or diminish our own national interests and national sovereignty, a nationalist reaction is almost inevitable and will probably assume populist form when it arrives. The theory is that this is Donald Trump. The theory is that, written back in 1996, foretold, if you will, or predicted the arrival of Donald Trump, not by name, but by virtue of somebody realizing what's happening and taking the bull by the horns and reacting it this way. Imagine giving this advice to a Republican presidential candidate. What if you stopped calling yourself a conservative and instead just promised to make America great again? What do you think might happen in the current climate, where the middle class of the country feels totally left out of everything going on? They feel like they've been targeted by every liberal Democrat policy that has not been stopped by the Republican Party. What if you stopped talking about the free market, drop all of that, and instead promised to fight the establishment selling out American jobs? What if you just stopped talking about reforming Medicare and Social Security, stop all of that, and instead accuse the people in power of failing to deliver better health care at a reasonable price, accusing them of destroying it? What if instead of talking about restoring the place of religion in society, you simply promised to restore the middle American core and everything it stands for? You promised to restore the economic and cultural losers to globalization to their rightful place in America. What if you said that you would restore them as the chief clients of the American state under your watch, being mindful of their interests when regulating the economy or negotiating trade deals? What if you decided to go to middle America and tell them, you're the guy that's going to make it right for you. You're the guy that's going to speak up for them. You're the guy that understands how they have been targeted, how their lives have been under the microscope, how the establishment has raised their taxes, made health care unaffordable, has caused cultural rot. You can't save, you can't send your kids to school anymore because it costs so much. They end up with debt. And besides, what's being taught in college reeks. So what if you come along and promise to fix all that, but you don't call yourself a conservative? You just say, you're going to make America great again. This is the advice this man gave Buchanan back in 1996. He said, this is what you need to do, Pat. Buchanan couldn't do it in 1996 because Buchanan was so identified with conservative policies, conservatism as a conservative, he couldn't abandon it, because that alone would have destroyed his credibility. And somebody asked Buchanan recently, after watching Trump run around the past few months, Pat, you get the impression that Trump, he's talking about the same stuff you talked about way back when you ran for president in 1996, 1992. Why do you think Trump's being heralded and supported and leading and you didn't? Buchanan said, because 20 years ago, I was just sounding the warning. None of this was really happening. I was warning people it was coming. Trump doesn't have to do it. We're living it. There's a 20-year record now. So Trump doesn't have to warn anybody. All he's got to do is let people know he recognizes it. All of this comes from a column called From Household to Nation, written by this guy, Samuel Francis. Pat Buchanan was the target back in 1996. And here's the simplification of the theory. It is that there are a lot of Americans who are losers, economic losers, not sad sack losers. They just lost out in the enterprise of economic globalization that has enriched a transnational global elite. These middle Americans see jobs disappearing to Asia. They see never-ending, increasing competition from unskilled, uneducated, increasing numbers of immigrants, most of them illegal. They are stuck right in the middle of cultural rot brought about by liberalism. And the key, they are also threatened by conservatives who they think would take away their Medicare, hand their Social Security earnings to fund managers on Wall Street, and cut off their unemployment. Now that, wait a minute, why would these why do they fear conservatives? Well, because this goes back to the whole thing, folks. There's a lot of conservatives out there, many of you in this audience are, But the theory now with Trump coming, let me just cut to the real chase. What the end of all this? People think that the arrival of Trump on the scene and the success he's having has blown whatever alignment there was between the so-called conservative movement and the Republican Party, because what is happening here, what is being exposed, what's being demonstrated is that, yeah, there are a lot of people who are conservative, but many will not call themselves that, and they are not conservatives because of conservative policy. In other words, they're not wonks. They don't understand all the ins and outs of classical conservatism. They're just who they are. And therefore, it's not conservatism that is the glue that has this group of people, this coalition, held together. It's quite a number of other things. And right now, the glue is an absolute opposition to the Democrat Party, to the American left, to the worldwide left, and everything they have done and want to continue doing. And as I said yesterday, if somebody comes along and convinces them that they're serious about stopping this and reversing it, they don't care if it's somebody from Mars. It doesn't have to be a classical conservative promising this. It can be anybody who makes them trust him. Anybody with credibility. So the fear is, when you get inside the Beltway, that all of the conservative institutions, both in media and in think tanks, you name it, all the various components are being exposed as really unnecessary and irrelevant and really haven't done anything for people. One illustration of that is the reaction to Sarah Palin from the Republican establishment. She shows up, not this election, but Palin showing up to endorse Trump, and everybody said, what in the world? Oh, my God. Let me ask you a simple question. If you're Sarah Palin, what has the Republican establishment done for you? Other than try to destroy you. The Republican establishment, they assigned people to shepherd her through the McCain campaign, who ended up telling the media, my God, this woman is so stupid, I can't vote for McCain. My God, the thought this woman might become oh my God, I can't. And HBO made a movie out of it. So if you're Sarah Palin, you might ask, you're asking me why I'm endorsing Trump? Why don't you ask me, what has the so-called conservative Republican Party done for me? Tea Party's a different thing, obviously. So the Trump triumph, the Trump coalition, is exposing the fact that it isn't conservative orthodoxy or conservatism or any of the hard work of the conservative elite in persuading people and educating them, informing them, that is causing people to be conservative. No, it's something really basic and simple. They are fed up with the modern-day Democrat Party. They're fed up with Obama and all of these people who have set out to transform, which means destroy, this country and rebuild it in ways it was never founded to be or intended to be. They want it stopped. They've shown up at the polls twice, 2010, 2014, to get it to stop. The Republican Party establishment does not understand this. They do not know who their conservative voters are. They've overestimated their conservatism, and by that is meant they think they're dyed-in-the-wool conservative theoreticians or absorbed in such things as the free market and all these other bells and whistles, and they're not. They're not liberal. They're not Democrat. Many of them do not want to be thought of as conservatives for a host of reasons. So somebody who comes along and is able to convey that he or she understands why they're angry and furthermore is going to do everything he can to fix it, is going to own them. So what's happening here? Nationalism, dirty word. Ooh, people hate it. Populism, even dirtier word. Nationalism and populism have overtaken conservatism in terms of appeal. And when this has happened, and when it exposes what people in Washington are afraid of, and that is, all this money we've asked people to send us and all these donations people have made, this movement, promote that. Where is conservatism in Washington? They're asking. Where is it? The Republican Party isn't conservative. Where is all these conservative people that are contributing to policy being implemented in Congress or in the Senate? They don't see it. I can take a break here. We'll come back and continue after this. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Okay, back to the phones. Well, we haven't been yet, so we're starting on the phones in Greencastle, Indiana. Seth, it's great to have you on the program. Hello, sir.
Hi, Rush. Pleasure to speak with you as a father, as a husband, as a patriot. I want to thank you for being our conservative champion out there, the voice of the unheard. I appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir, very much. I appreciate that. I really do.
Yes, sir. I have heard so many folks call into your program here, and some of them have been upset because it sounds like you support Trump for a while, and then some have been upset because it sounds like you support Cruz for a while. I've tried to stay above the fray and think objectively for myself and listen to you. I didn't turn the radio off when I didn't think that you agreed with me. And I just listen. I listen to the things that you did say. I listen to the things that you didn't say. And, I think I've come to a conclusion as to what I've heard you say, Rush. I think it's been very beneficial to we the people. As I've been listening here, I've heard you talk about Trump, and I think that it boils down to you're thrilled that you're finally seeing someone being able to handle the media the way that you've been preaching now for decades, that the media needs to be handled. But I've also heard you, as I've listened to you closely, I've heard you talk about Cruz as a rock-ribbed conservative, as a thoroughbred, as a constitutional genius. And, at the end of the day, whenever it all boils down and comes down to it, while being able to handle the media may be able to win you the presidency, it's not going to make you a good president. And what we need at this time is we need a true, genuine, constitutional, conservative genius to champion the cause of we the people. And I see that person as being none other than Senator Ted Cruz. I understand. I appreciate
this was a brilliant endorsement of Ted Cruz. Seth, if I were giving away prizes, I would give you one.
Thank you, sir.
Brilliant. Calls here praising me, explaining to everybody in the audience how I am brilliantly doing what I'm doing, softens me up to let him go ahead and make his Cruz endorsement. He basically told me he thinks I'm full of excrement, but he didn't want to say it. That is the most polite way I've ever been told to shut the hell up about Trump I have ever heard. Very, very clever. This is the kind of brilliant, smart people we have here in the audience of the Rush Limbaugh program on the EIB network. But he raises an interesting point. A lot of people, he says, I think I know what it is you like about Trump. Trump really runs aces around the media, and you love that and so forth. And the reason I'm spending so much time, folks, today, yesterday, and I'm not through today with this, the reason I'm spending so much time getting into it is because there are explanations for why people that you think and have always thought are tried and true conservatives are supporting Trump. There are understandable reasons for it. And then there are some of you who also consider yourselves conservative, who wouldn't want Ted Cruz anywhere near because of whatever problems you have with him. What I'm trying to do here is explain why various groups of people think what they think and why it's valid. This is actually a really fascinating set of options that have presented themselves here. And the challenge for me here, what I'm trying to do is explain. I know there are many of you out there. I don't know how many, but I know there are a lot of you that hate Trump. You just despise on the basis he's not a conservative and he's fooling everybody. And how in the world? Because he's a conservative, how can anybody not do anything but condemn Trump? And that's what I'm trying to explain to you. That we get past the emotion. There are reasons people are doing, and people who call themselves conservative are supporting Trump. But more importantly, people who don't are as well. So that's the challenge I've given myself here is to try to explain this as I am trying to figure it out myself. I think it's a fascinating development, this entire primary season and the various elements and the people in it as they seek your support, seek your votes. It really is fascinating. It's upsetting a lot of conventional wisdom. It's turning a lot of conventional wisdom upside down and on its head. And it's confirming others. It's confirming certain things, and it's standing other things we all thought we knew and understood upside down. And if you're not clear, if you're not certain, you can end up being totally confused, which leads to anger and so forth. When we come back, let me read some of the portions of Sarah Palin's speech that she made yesterday in her endorsement of Trump, because that might facilitate this effort here a little bit. In the meantime, sit tight, and I'm going to go back to solving my battery life problem here. By the way, folks, Angelo Codvilla, in that original piece he did on the ruling class versus the country class, he predicted this as well. It's not just this guy back in 1996. Whose name was Samuel Francis. What's interesting about the 1996 piece is how right on it is in foretelling Trump and the way he's campaigning and what he's saying. I mean, this is a guy back in 1996 urging Buchanan to just go all in. And he would say, you forget conservatism, Pat. You're going to turn too many people off. Some people who are conservative, but they don't want anybody to know it. They don't want anybody to think it. They're embarrassed of it for whatever reason. Don't even go to conservative. Don't even mention the word, Pat. Just pro-America. Just go nationalism, populism, whatever, and you'll rake them in. You don't need those people, Pat. This is the summation of his advice. They'll drag you down. All they'll want to get in is on your campaign, be your policy expert. You don't need them, Pat. They're not going to help you. Just go. But he couldn't. Buchanan couldn't abandon conservatism. He was too identified as one. But Trump, nobody's ever thought of him as a conservative. So doesn't have to abandon anything. Codvilla predicted this as well more recently. Codvilla said that it was only a matter of time. The country class would figure out that the ruling class not only not listening to them, but is actively suppressing them. And there would be a price to pay for this. At some point, the country class, which considers itself the group of people that actually make the country work, would simply revolt and abandon the conventional arrangements that have always existed, the parties, party loyalty, schmoyalty. It would come down to who is going to fix the problems that everybody agrees are taking place, that we face, and are being pushed by people in Washington. Now, as it relates to Trump, I think that, there's a visceral reaction to Trump. And if you look at George Will, he's written pieces on Trump that are, he was just as angry as he was that one night he was on with O'Reilly about O'Reilly's book on killing Reagan. And if you remember that, but it's not just George Will. Every week, somebody in the Republican establishment, this week it's Michael Gerson, who was a speechwriter for Bush, and this is not his first. Gerson's out there writing yesterday that if Trump or Cruz wins, it's the end of the Republican Party. That's it. We don't know it anymore. It's gone. The Republican Party will be gone. And what is noteworthy about this is the people in the establishment of the Republican Party who are writing this stuff and speaking this stuff haven't made one serious effort to understand why so many in their own party want to abandon them. They're just chalking it up to the fact that they're conservative, and that means they're kooks, or they're lame, or they're single issue, or what have you. And they are totally misunderstanding the people who have supported them, who have sent them money, who have voted for them. There's a total disconnect. There's an anger over being rejected, and the anger, I think, really is the fact that here's what it boils down to, folks. This is what angers the so-called, when I say conservative movement, by the way, see, that has to be defined, too. Snerdley, we'll run a test here. Be honest. Now, there's no right or wrong here. When you hear the term conservative movement, what or who do you think of? What is it? And don't suck up and say it's me and whatever I'm doing. What is the conservative movement? Is it the blogs? Is it conservative media? Is it think tanks? Is it who? Okay, conservative media and grassroots groups, the conservative movement. Okay, people assume that because there's a conservative movement, therefore it is conservatism. The principles, the beliefs, the intellectually tested, tried, and true philosophies that unify everybody into this movement. And it turns out, with Trump attracting so many conservatives, it obviously isn't that unites the conservative movement. It isn't conservatism. It isn't the understanding and belief in Edmund Burke and Buckley. Take your pick of any of the intellectual conservative founders, if you will. It's not an understanding, respect for, understanding. Not Hayek Schmayek. Who's that? People wouldn't know. I'm going to run across these names in everyday, ordinary, even education. So I think the reason that Gerson writes what he writes and the reason any of them are just rendered, what's the word? Not incoherent, but man, they become unhinged. Maybe the best way to describe it. Become unhinged at the very arrival of Trump. They're unhinged that Trump hasn't blown up. They're unhinged that people have not abandoned Trump. They're unhinged that Trump goes out and says all of these, what they think are just classically offensive, politically incorrect, crude things. Like what he said about Megyn Kelly and blood. And at first, how in the world can anybody still support? Oh, my God, this is... And they get unhinged, not understanding this. Am I right? And yet, Trump hasn't lost anybody. And is still maybe gaining people. So what in the world? It doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense. Everything that we have counseled people not to do, he's doing. Everything we've told people not to do if they want to win, everything we've told people the way they have to behave, the things they have to talk about, he's doing the exact opposite and skunking us. So I think they think, this is what they think. I'm jury's still out with me on that, but I do find it all fascinating. I think they are worried, they're scared that Trump's success and his broad-based coalition, which consists of a lot of conservative Republicans, I think they are worried that this all illustrates how unimportant they might really be in the grand scheme. Trump's methods, his speeches, I mean, his approach, his appeal is it's an affront to them, their institutions, the things that they believe. In other words, here's a guy, Trump, who's not conservative in these people's minds. You go to the Gersons, take your pick, any of them, in the inside of Beltway media types. Trump's not conservative, you idiots. Don't you understand? Trump's destroying the conservative movement. That's what they're afraid of, you see. Trump's not conservative. You people are being fooled. How can you people not see it? You people are being fooled by a liar, a cheat, a Barnum and Burke, a Bailey Circus Act. My God, don't you understand? They're worried that what you're going to end up realizing is that the Republican Party doesn't need all of these brilliant think tanks and all this policy expertise, because what's it gotten anybody? You got a bunch of people out there calling themselves libertarians and conservatives, and yet to the people who are conservative inside the Beltway, they're not conservatives. They're bitter clingers or what have you. But they are worried that you are going to figure out that all their brilliance, all their columns, all of their position papers, seminars, all of that stuff hasn't gotten you anything, that you're realizing that hasn't gotten you anything. The things you believe in, they still don't support, they still don't try to implement. And ultimately, you're going to figure that out. I think this is what worries them. Wild guess on my part, could be wrong. But if you thought that you held the keys to the kingdom, and if you thought the serfs in the kingdom looked at you with wild-eyed admiration and respect for brilliance and culture, levels of success that you could never dream of attaining yourself, if you have that attitude, and all of a sudden you realize the serfs don't see you that way, and maybe even begin to think, my God, why do we need these people anyway? Well, I don't need to send them any more money. I don't need to. And that's how they see. They feel abandoned. They feel like you are not believing them. They feel like you have like spoiled children. You are not appreciative of the genius in your midst. And so, well, if hell descends upon you, you deserve it. And we'll just go third party or whatever. I don't know. I'll take a brief time out as the EIB network rolls on. El Rushball behind the golden EIB microphone. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Back to the phones. I've still got the Sarah Palin speech, but I want to get phones in too here, so we'll keep going with Kevin in St. Louis. Great to have you, sir. Hello.
Hey, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I think the best way to explain to people why Trump is so popular is to kind of, mirror what you did when you first started. You started, telling people who you were, and people started hearing you, and your popularity just grew. You sort of set the foundation for, what you believed in, and kind of built on that.
Well, you're not the first person to tell me that they think that they. Well, remember when I started, it seemed like a lot like what Trump is doing now. I've had some people tell me that. Here's the thing, though. This is, I don't know the answer to this. And I can give you the theory. I just have. Here we have, well, let's go through it very briefly. Just very quickly to get to the question I have about Trump. So I think it makes total sense why Trump has support. I'm not confused by it at all. And I'm not angry. I think we have two political parties, but we don't. The Republican Party, for whatever reason, refuses to be an opposition party. The Republican Party refuses to stand up and even make the pretense of trying to stop Barack Obama. Out in the real world, Barack Obama and the Democrat Party are seen as destroying this country. And not just domestically, they're destroying the military. They're destroying foreign policy. They are nuking up Iran. They are behaving in ways that befriending our enemies and alienating our friends and allies. And people are at their wits' end. They have voted in large numbers expecting there to be some opposition, pushback to this. That's the standard normal procedure of politics. Politics is at least two competing organizations. And when the winning organization always faces opposition by the losing organization because it wants to get back in power. Well, the people that vote for Republicans are not seeing any opposition. They're not seeing any pushback. In fact, it's even worse than that. They're seeing the Republican Party agree with the Democrats on something as key as open borders. If there's one thing that people in this country think is responsible for the direct hit on the economy and their future and their kids' future, it is illegal immigration and the willing importation of unskilled, uneducated, totally dependent people who are going to be automatic voters for the Democrat Party, which means this never ends. So they're expecting the Republican Party to stand up and say no. They're expecting the Republican Party to stand up and try to stop it. They're not seeing it. They're at their wits' end. They have voted. They've donated. They've given money when they could afford it. They have campaigned. They've gotten out the vote. They have shown up as Tea Party. They've gone to town meetings. They have gone neighborhood door to door. They've manned the phone banks. They've done all of that. They got nothing to show for it. Except maybe they lose their job. Maybe they're cut back to 30 hours. Maybe their neighborhood Walmart's closing down. Everything's caving in on them. They're the ones playing by the rules. They're not cultural perverts. They're not people breaking the law. They're doing everything they can to play by the rules, and they don't think anybody is standing up for them or representing them. They feel powerless. They feel like they're being targeted. They think like they're being blamed for whatever's gone wrong in this country that Obama and the Democrats don't like, and they're not to blame. They represent what's great about this country, and they're being winnowed out. Well, it only stands to reason that somebody comes along and lets them know that he agrees with that, and these days are over, and we're going to make this country great again, and you're going to help me do it. We're together going to make this country. I guarantee you that is a magnet that no Republican, conservative, expert, think tank, whatever can stop. It's not hard to understand this at all. Except the Republican Party, I don't think, understands what is animating and motivating their base supporters. They're not worried about the Republican Party future. They're not worried about the image of the Republican Party. They're not worried about the media liking them. They're not worried about money being done. They're worried about their country. They oppose stridently the modern-day Democrat Party. They oppose the policies of Barack Hussein. Oh, it isn't personal. They just don't like what's happening. They don't like the out-of-control spending. They don't like $4.5 trillion printed and given to Wall Street, and here's Wall Street squandering it now. They don't like any of this. Somebody comes along and says, I don't either. You know what? We're going to work together, and we're going to make this country great again. We got stupid people. Trump's not criticizing Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. He's criticizing stupid people. He's going to be smarter. He's going to make great deals. He's going to make the country great again. People want to believe that. This is not hard to understand at all, if you ask me. Now, my question is, and it really is not that important, does Trump know he's doing this, or did he just, is it just who he is and he just happened to arrive on the scene at the moment, or is this some sort of grand strategy that he's working out? Or did he just fall into this? I mean, right person, right time, or is it strategic? Anyway, I got to take a break here. I'm sorry. I'll be right back. Don't go. It's the fastest 3 hours in media, hosted by me, your guiding light, El Rushball, behind the golden EIB microphone. Hang in there, be tough, my friends. Still working on a battery life problem here, and we'll be back. Continue in a moment. What the heck just happened here? Never mind. No big deal. Greetings and welcome back. Well, my watch gave me an alert that a couple Steeler players and have surgery. So what? See, it's an ESPN alert. It's an ESPN alert. I got Steelers alerts. I mean, it didn't, I felt a little taptic buzz, and what the hell? I looked at it, and it had this big flashing red thing. Ooh, what's this? And it was just that. Anyway, greetings and welcome back, folks. Great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh on the cutting edge of societal evolution. No, it's not having a Jeb Bush. Is that what I look like? No. I was not surprised that my phone works. I just what is this alert now? What the it was why get an alert that a couple players are having surgery? Anyway, big deal. We're back. Here's another one. What is this? Oh, they finished putting in satellite dishes at home. Cool. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the pro. Way had to upgrade to DirecTV dishes. They were getting, the salt air out here. You need to replace them often. So you have to wash the carpet. Oh, there's Slick Willie. Slick Willie. What's that thing on his forehead? Has he become a Sikh? 800-282, not his forehead. Cut himself shaving. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. Naturally, I'm going to email Rush. What is this battery problem? Folks, I'd love to explain it to you, but there's nobody that can help me because nobody knows as much as I know. And I know the stick to the issues crowd would just have a fit. It's a challenging tech problem, however. I would love to tell you the steps I've taken to try to isolate the problem, but anyway, I think, folks, the thing that's happening, the awakening that's taken place, and I think it's a serious awakening that is taking place within the Republican Party and the so-called conservative movement. And when I talk about the conservative movement, to me, I'm talking about Washington. I'm not talking about you and the grassroots. I'm talking about the establishment, conservative media, the brainiacs, the think tanks, the professors, and it's not bad. Don't miss it. I'm just saying that there is a new understanding of who out in the country is actually conservative and who isn't. And I think what's actually being revealed here is that the Republican Party itself and even some of the conservative intelligentsia has misjudged and overestimated the conservatism of the base negatively. They think have a negative connotation of conservatism. They don't like it, obviously, and they think it's the pro-lifers, the social issues. That's what they think conservatives are, and that's all they are. And they're embarrassed of them, and like going to convention with them, and their wives nag them about it, and they just... And what's being discovered here by virtue of the Trump candidacy is that this misunderstanding is being exposed. And it's now out in the open that the Republican conservative base is not monolithically conservative. It has lots of components that have been lumped together as conservative, maybe for the past 30 years. And there are some people who think that this masquerade's over, is good that it's over, that the idea that conservatism is one type of thinking and one person and a monolithic thing. Some people think it's a great idea to have this blown up. I think the best way to explain it is that there are a lot of people in this country who are conservative. There are a lot of those people that won't admit it for whatever reason, or don't want anybody to know it for whatever reason or another. And therefore, they live and vote and they do things, for the most part, which are conservative, certainly not liberal. But that's not the glue that unites them all. If it were, if conservatism, this is the big shock, if conservatism were the glue, the belief and understanding of deep but commonly understood conservative principles, if that's what defined people as conservative and was the glue that made the conservative movement a big movement, then Trump would have no chance. He literally would have no chance. Because whatever he is, he's not and never has been known as a doctrinaire conservative. But Neither is John McCain. Neither is half 90% of the Republican Party. So it's not a criticism. It's not an allegation. Point is that if conservatism were this widely understood, deeply held belief system that united conservatives and united people as conservatives, then outsiders like Trump wouldn't stand a prayer of getting support from people who call it. Yet he is. Therefore, it's safe to conclude that there are other things at play here that make people conservative. And I'm going to go back to it. It's the thing that just in front of everybody's face, and it's apparently so hard to believe. It's this united, virulent opposition to the left and the Democrat Party and Barack Obama. And I, for the life of me, don't know what's so hard to understand about that. Now, Sarah Palin and her speech. Oh, there she is in Tulsa. She's out making a campaign appearance in, I guess, Trump's in Tulsa. Oh, really? I just was told she looks better today. See, these poor women in politics, like Hillary, they can't get a break. She looks better today. What, did she not look good yesterday? Well, you didn't like that cowboy jacket or whatever it was? Why are they in Tulsa on the eve of the Hawkeye and the New Hampshire primary? Why are they there? Oh, the answer's easy. The answer's easy. Just asking it rhetorically. Let's, excuse me, Mom. Let's look at her endorsement speech. Don't have the whole thing here, but I've got most of it. It's not getting very much attention. Her jacket is getting more attention than what she said. I've seen people criticize her delivery. She lost her place. Look at cue cards. Trump looked kind of out of place, being not behind the podium. That, by the way, I said this in the first hour. I was surprised that Trump went the endorsement route. I mean, I'm not surprised that he would accept it, but Trump just doesn't look like Trump giving up the podium and standing aside. I don't care who it is for. And endorsements are kind of the way it's done, right? In by-the-book politics. And Trump's not by-the-book politics. But what is by-the-book politics is win at all costs. So if you have to suck it up and say you support ethanol, and if you want to accept endorsements from somebody that's going to undermine Cruz, I guess you'll do it. But she, in her speech yesterday, she explained why conservatives are angry about what's happening to the country and why they are as angry at the Republican establishment as they are at the Democrats. And she explained how the permanent political class has been created and corrupted by what's now known as the donor class. And she made it plain that what she wants to do now is participate in a movement that holds every one of those people accountable for the damage they've done to the country, for the failures they continue to mount up and be. When asked why I would jump into a primary, stirring it up a little bit maybe, and choose one person over some friends who are running, and I've endorsed a couple others in their races before they decided to run for president, I was told, warned left and right, you're going to get so clobbered in the press, you're going to get beat up, chewed up, and spit out. I'm thinking, and like you guys haven't tried to do that every day since that night in 2008 when I was on stage nominated for VP. Her point is, and where she got close to saying this in her own words, but didn't. But really, what people are complaining, why would you do this? What is the concern? What's the Republican Party ever really done for her? I mean, besides nominate, McCain chose her, but members of the Republican establishment did their best to destroy her, to impugn her reputation. The people that were assigned to handle her were out leaking to the press how stupid she is and how it was so bad that she's so stupid that these people couldn't vote for their own candidate, McCain, because if something happened to him and she became president, they couldn't live with themselves if they'd made that. So they were going to vote Democrat or not vote at all. These are the people responsible for shepherding her through the campaign. So she's a legitimate question. What if, I've already been clobbered. I've been clobbered by the people that were going to clobber me today before. So, and like you all, I'm still standing after being clobbered. So those of us who have kind of gone through the ringer, as Mr. Trump has, it makes me respect you even more. That you're here and you're putting your efforts and you're putting your reputations, you're putting relationships on the line to do the right thing for this country because you're ready to make America great again. I think it's a salient point. It wasn't just Sarah Palin who was smeared by the media and the rest of the Democrat Party and even the Republican establishment. It was her supporters, by extension, who were smeared and insulted. And now the same suspects, same usual suspects, are trying to do the same thing all over again, this time to Trump and his supporters. But Trump is fighting back where she couldn't because she was part of the organization trying to win, so she couldn't fight back again, even though I'm sure she was tempted to. I think this explains why so many Tea Party supporters and other conservatives are drawn to Trump, even if he doesn't, broadcast or display a bunch of conservative credentials. I mean, people have a bond and a connection here to people who are laughed at, made fun of, criticized, ripped to shreds, and so forth, just because of what they believe and who they are. She said, now, 8 years ago, I warned that Obama's promised fundamental transformation of America, that it was going to take more from you and leave America weaker on the world stage, and that it would soon be unrecognizable. Well, that's one promise Obama kept, but he didn't do it alone. And this is important to remember, especially those of you like me, a member of the GOP. This is what we have to remember in this very contested, competitive, great primary race. Trump's candidacy, it has exposed not just the tragic ramifications of a betrayal of a transformation of our country, but Trump has exposed the complicity on both sides of the aisle that has enabled it. Okay? Well, Trump, what he's been able to do, which is really ticking people off, which I'm glad about, he's going rogue left and right, man, and that's why he's doing so well. He's been able to tear the veil off this idea of the system, the way that the system really works. And please hear me on this. I want you guys to understand more and more how the system, the establishment, works and has gotten us into the troubles that we are in America. So she's doing, you don't think she has wanted to do this for years? You don't think she's wanted to launch back at these people who tried to ruin her reputation and destroy her? And she wasn't able to because of the obvious requirements of party loyalty to McCain, and all that. She said a permanent political class has been doing the bidding of their campaign donors, and that's why you see that the borders are kept open. For them, for their cheap labor, they want to come in. That's why they've been bloating budgets for crony capitalists to be able to suck off of them. It's why we see these lousy trade deals that gut our industry for special interests elsewhere. We need somebody new who has the power and is in the position to bust up that establishment, to make things great again. It's part of the problem. His candidacy, which is a movement, it's a force, it's a strategy. It proves that as long as the politicos, they get to keep their titles and their perks and their media ratings, they don't really care who wins elections as long as they get to maintain what they've got now. She's not wrong. She's more right about that, even she may know. All right, brief timeout, my friends, as we keep chugging along here. Hang in there, be tough. No, it's not important to go through the details of the battery life problem. That would bore people. The important thing is that I got nowhere to go when I have a problem because there's nobody that knows any more about this than I do. That's what's frustrating. All right, here we go back to the phones. Woodbridge, Virginia. Jay, great to have you on the EIB network, sir. Hello. Jay, testing 1, 2, 3. Uno, dos, tres. Nobody's there, so where are we going to? Bob in San Diego. Great to have you, sir. Welcome to the EIB network. Hello.
Thank you. Isn't it ironic that the fear of the GOP establishment 2 months ago was Trump losing and then running as a third-party candidate? And now, lo and behold, the GOP establishment, which to me is becoming desperate, irrelevant, and a very entitled minority, they're now threatening to do the exact same thing to Trump.
Well,
I think
George Will is, and he speculated about the possibility. It was in an interview. I don't yet think we're ready to say that the entire Republican establishment said they're going to go third party, unless you want to try to make us believe that George Will's speaking for the establishment and not just himself.
Well, I think Trump can at least ask. I think it's legitimate for him to ask the other candidates to do the pledge that he was forced to do.
Well, now that they did make a big deal about that. It was the first question, and they were all asked at the first Fox debate. And Trump said, "No, I won't sign the pledge." And of course, all hell erupted. But no, you're right. I mean, Trump was forced to make the pledge, and here these other guys now. It looks like Trump might win. Well, they're going to take their toys and go home. It won't matter. That's the thing. That is, I guess, is another way of trying to make my point is that it won't matter. If the conservative movement, if you will, previously defined, not to include you or me, I'm talking about the specific East Coast corridor, Washington is, look, folks, where those people live, everything's fine. Lowest unemployment rate in the country, practically full employment. The per capita income is sky high in Washington and surrounding counties. Everything's cool there. And nothing happening there that is at all similar to, say, what's happening in Flint, Michigan, or Detroit, or a number of other places out there. But I think what they're all, and I'm skating on some thin ice here in a sense, because I don't have any animus toward these people or anybody. But I think they could all cry third party, they could all claim, and it wouldn't matter. It's not going to make people get scared and abandon Trump. And that's, I think, what this is demonstrating to them, is that they're not the oracles that they thought they were. I could be wrong about it. I think it's still up for grabs as to what really explains all this, but I don't think some things are disputable now. And I think from this day going forward, I think it's forever changed. The definition of what and who is a conservative and what and who is the right is now much more broad-based than it has ever been thought to be. And therefore, it's going to be eye-opening to a lot of people who thought they understood it. The saga continues. A man, a legend, a way of life. So I got a note from my good friend today, Andrew McCarthy, National Review, former federal prosecutor, and he sent me a story from the Politico. Breaking news, 2015 sets new global temperature record. Sends me the story. Yes, there's a one-word comment, the word sigh, as though, no matter what we do, no matter how much truth we explore and expose, these leftists just keep coming at us with lie after lie after lie. And here's the upshot of the story is the Earth's temperature reached the warmest level in more than a century of records, breaking the previous high mark set in 2014, federal scientists said Wednesday. I have already seen stories where these data have been manipulated that this is not true, and it isn't true. It wasn't the warmest year in 100 years. They've been saying that. But anyway, that's why he sent it. It's hey, Rush, look at the latest BS we have to. They just never stop. So I wrote him back because, interestingly, I was reading my tech blogs last night, and I ran across one of them is Gizmodo, which is part of the Gawker. And that, you really don't want to go there, folks. You just, and I like the Gawker guys. I have fun with them. But it's, anyway, the Gizmodo guys are the tech branch of Gawker. And they deal strictly in tech. But global warming is tech to them. And they were all excited. This before I got the email from Andy. I'm reading this, and I'm just cracking up. Because they are all excited. They say, they've got this big post on their blog, that the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and NASA just released a scientific paper explaining where all the heat that didn't happen in those 15 years, where it went. You saw the story. You saw. Remember, folks, for 15 years, everybody, even the global warming hoaxers, admit there was no warming for 15 years. And they come up with various explanations. Well, there was a pause or this or that. But these Gawker guys, or the Gizmodo guys, it's just ecstatic because the JPL and NASA, I think it's JPL, they have discovered, you know where the heat went? The heat that didn't happen? The heat that should have happened but didn't? The oceans ate it, folks. The oceans ate the heat. Yes, NASA has discovered it. That's where the heat is. We didn't feel it. It didn't make the atmosphere because the ocean ate it. And you know how bad it is? The heat got so deep, it went deeper than the sunlight penetrates in the ocean. And that's how we missed it. It's as far as 700 meters down there. And you know why that's bad? Because when salt water warms up, when the deep, cold ocean starts getting warm because all that heat was eaten by the ocean, salt water heats faster than fresh water. And this is a brand new threat for coastal flooding now. Something nobody had ever considered. Coastal flooding was going to come from glacial melt and this kind of stuff. But now there's a brand new reason for it that nobody ever thought of. The oceans ate the heat, thereby keeping it out of the atmosphere, and the heat, which somehow sunk to 700 meters, is now warming what should be ice-cold water, and that's going to be bad for the lobsters and for the plankton and for everything, and it's going to be bad for us because the Maldives are not going to exist very long because that water is going to heat up, and when heated water heats up, it expands and rises, and oh no, we're going to have coastal flooding, a brand new threat. Icebergs can melt from the bottom now that we won't see, and they're ecstatic because this destruction is now confirmed. They are ecstatic that the heat has been found. And the guy that wrote this ends it by saying, "Take that, deniers." Take that. You can read it. And I just, folks, what's amazing is that I don't know how we live with these people who are so devoid of any reality whatsoever. And they just don't stop. They get this stuff in their heads, and they end up wanting it to be true. Not just this, any other number of crisis-related hoaxes and abnormalities that my point is, I don't know how we can ever coexist with this kind of brain-dead abandonment of sensible reality. Anyway, here's Scott, Oklahoma City. Great to have you with us, sir. Hello.
Thank you for taking my call today, Rush. I do appreciate it. It's great to speak to a personal hero of mine. What I wanted to say is if the Republican Party really wanted to kill the Trump campaign, or the establishment anyway, they would jump on board for him. I mean, look what they've done to, say, Bush's campaign. He came out flat on his face. They jump over to Rubio. Rubio drops to the polls. I think it's the people's anger at the establishment that they're almost drawn in to defend Trump against the attacks of him.
This is an interesting theory that you have here.
I appreciate that.
So you think that the fastest way to kill Trump would be for the establishment to join him, sing his praises, promote him, say this is the guy we've been waiting for. We want Trump. Trump's our guy. And that would force people to abandon Trump. But, you know, it's a great idea. But believe me, the donor class couldn't do it with any credibility. They wouldn't be able to sustain this. They might be for a day, go out and be believable, but they wouldn't be able to keep this up. And other Republicans, everybody on Jeb's team. Jeb would have to abandon Jeb, go over to Trump. Trump wouldn't believe it, number one. Then the other people, they'd have to go out and try to convince everybody they're serious about it. And Trump would, well, he probably might play along and believe him and hail them as the greatest people in the world. Then when they abandon him again, because they would have to, they couldn't stick with it. But I like the theory. It's the old reverse psychology theory. By the way, minor correction, the Gawker piece I just read was written by a woman, Maddie Stone. I kept calling the writer a guy. There was no apology from them for lying to us about the warming for the last 15 years. Remember the warming? They admitted there wasn't any. Everybody admitted they were perplexed. They wondered whether models went wrong. But now they found it. Yes, the oceans ate it. Here, let me just read you a portion of this post. It's easy to overlook the deeper layers of the ocean beyond the zone where light can penetrate. Yet this murky region of our biosphere has a key role to play in regulating Earth's thermostat by carrying currents that redistribute heat and energy everywhere. Even small changes in the temperature of the deep ocean could have dramatic global feedbacks, which is why scientists recently started asking whether anything has changed. They know it all. They have all the answers. They started asking, has anything changed? But it was a report this summer from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, 2 decades of observational data to show how the oceans have been redistributing heat since the early 2000s. The researchers found that heat has been sinking from the surface of the Indian and Pacific Oceans into deeper layers. Well, then how in the hell do we have an El Nino, which is the warming of surface temperatures? How does heat sink? Doesn't heat rise? I realize these are questions of a novice, and I'll be lambasted for demonstrating my scientific ignorance by asking. But I couldn't help it. Sit tight, folks. Back after this. Okay, back to the phones. Ed in Exeter, New Hampshire. Welcome, sir.
Yes,
great to have you.
Rush, thank you for having me. A long-time right-wing Christian conservative dittos.
Thank you, sir.
I was told to get right to my point. I hope you can hear me. I believe that the Republican establishment has made Trump who he is, because if they had kept some promises, he wouldn't be what he is now. He wouldn't have the power he is. But I'm not planning on voting for him in February 9th, because I don't really trust him. I'm not sure that he hasn't given any reason to believe that he would keep constitutional principles, but with that, or like using executive orders, and that concerns me. I intend to vote for Cruz. I was tossed very much between Cruz and Carson, because they're both men of integrity, and I believe that they would stick to their principles and do what is right.
All right. Well, that's cool. Understand your point extremely well. You know, here's a example. Trump the other day said, and I'm going to make sure we're going to make something like this. Apple, we're going to make their damn computers in America. Yay! Now, Does anybody really believe that Trump is going to do that? Does anybody really believe that Trump thinks he can do that? It would not solve the battery problem. The battery problem is not related to where things are manufactured. There is no way Apple products could be manufactured in this country, not with everything else staying the same. I don't think people have stopped to think there's no reason they would. What it takes. I mean, these factories over there, they have, the iPhone factories have 700,000 people working in them in every factory. Some have 350,000. They're cities. They have hospitals, rec rooms, all this sort of, everything that's in the supply chain is there. It's down the next block. iPhones would cost $2,000 minimum if they were made here. And standard minimum wage was. But anyway, the question, does Trump know this? Or does he, I mean, some people really serious. Is he this ignorant? Does he really think that a president is a king and can just order companies to change their manufacturing process and location? Or does he just say it? And if he's just saying it, then how does he explain later when it doesn't happen? How does he explain to people who believed him that he was going to bring Apple manufacture here? Now, that's the long-term view you've got to have. How's he going to get out of this one? Are people taking him seriously in the first place on it? You don't think so? I don't either. I think they understand that that's his way of being pro-America. I don't think anybody, I don't think that thimbleful of people think that he actually intends to do this. It's symbolic. But it's for another day. Quick phone call here. Robbie, my adopted hometown, Sacramento. Welcome, sir. Hello.
Hi, Rush Limbaugh.
Hi.
Thanks to my mom's good taste in men, I am a Rush baby.
Oh.
I've been listening to you since the 1980s here in Sacramento, and I got your autograph when I was 10. I think you're in there with a couple of gold medalist Olympians. And I was just calling to let you know that I would drop you in a second. I would drop you so quickly if you stopped being a champion of truth. If you started to confuse truth from fiction and you started to compromise, I would be so done.
Wait a second. Wait a minute, Robbie. Where's this? Are you thinking I'm on the verge here?
No, I'm just calling to tell you something that you well know. You are not the glue of the conservative movement. And we love you for that.
I'm not the glue, you mean?
You're not the glue. You're not the glue. But you love truth, and that's why we love you.
I appreciate that. See, this, by the way, Robbie, I can't think of, because you're exactly right. This is my whole point. The media can't make you drop me. Nothing the media could say could make you question your loyalty, but boy, I could. I could make the wrong move over a couple of times. It wouldn't take much. And that's the point. No, I don't. I don't have enough time to explain the battery thing. Maybe on Friday, I'll explain the battery thing. Okay, folks, that's it. I have a super secret meeting, powwow that I have to attend. And then back to the battery life. I think I got it nailed down to PDF uploads, conflicting with iOS 9.3 and 9.2.1. But I'll fix it. See you tomorrow. Adios.